America. My name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live every Monday and Thursday. Monday, I try to do a more relationship show because I don't want you to get divorced or screw up your kids. And then on Thursday, I do a more politics show. Today's show is not going to be strictly politics. It's going to be a trailer review, and I'll flesh it out a little bit. So I saw this trailer review, and I think you should too. I'll go to YouTube. You can find it. It's called The American Society of Magical Negroes. And the Magical Negro is a movie trope where a black guy usually helps a white guy, and there are a few characteristic features of this black guy. One, he doesn't get laid, and he pretty much exists for the betterment of the white guy. In the movie, A Bag of Ants is a good example of this. There was, I want to say it was an Eddie Murphy movie that came out. And it's funny because Eddie Murphy made a joke about, I think it was in Raw, Delirious, and one of his old things. I remember him making a joke about how it was good that Michael Jackson went to the Grammys or something like that with Brooke Shields, and it was non-threatening to America because America would have known if Eddie Murphy had gone to the Grammys or whatever with Brooke Shields was going to get it that night. And that's so. The Magical Negro is sexually non-threatening, and he exists to help white people get what white people want out of life. And so they made kind of a spoof movie about that. And then this spoof movie, according to the trailer, in this spoof movie, there's an entire societies of Negroes with actual magic. And they get and sustain their magic by making white people feel comfortable, which means a lot in this world. Depending on who you talk to, that's like 80%, not 80%, that might be too much, 60% of a lot of black jobs is how to make white people feel comfortable in a certain sort of way. That means everyone from Obama to your most recent highest profile Negro exists to make white people feel a certain way. And if you're not willing to make white people feel a certain way, it's not as if your talent doesn't matter, but if you're not willing to make white people feel a certain way, don't be surprised if you catch a charge. Just ask, I don't know, Jonathan Majors or Nate. There's no small list of black guys who've been taken out because, not for on merit, but because they didn't feel like making white people feel a certain sort of way. So the idea that your job as a black person is to make white people feel a certain sort of way, and there's magic in that, and that's what keeps the peace. You can earn a good living, and you can have all this power. All you have to do is use that power, and with great power comes great responsibility to make white people feel comfortable, right? So there's this idea that you can have power and you could use power in America, and all you have to do is make white people feel comfortable. And that works for this guy, according to the trailer, for a while until apparently he wants a girl. He wants to pursue a girl, but the white guy also wants to pursue the girl. So does he keep his power by making the white guy comfortable and laying off the girl, or does he risk his power for love and self-determination? That's what looks like to be the gist of the movie. But there's kind of a lot going on there because there's a way in which peace and no small amount of power and material comfort comes from making white people feel comfortable. So feel a certain sort of way. And as long as you're not too worried about autonomy, or you tie your autonomy to something else, then you're fine. But the problem is that means, especially for black males, you have to be sexually non-threatening. And so, or you have to appear to be. You have to kind of like, is it Terry Crews? There's one black guy. I think it's Terry Crews who goes out of his way to be both a big black guy and to be non-threatening. I just feel like that's just too much work. I gave up all that work a long time ago, so I'm threatening. If you could spend your whole life trying not to appear to be the kind of guy who makes white people uncomfortable, but or to be non-threatening, both sexually and politically. But that's a lot of drain up all my chi. That would drain up all my life force. I've seen guys like that, and those guys are usually rendered mute in some way, and I would not want to be rendered mute. Or they could talk about everything except white people. And I don't know to the extent to which you can talk about everything in America, except and not talk about white people. That's like talking about you can talk about the Middle East and Israel, Palestine all you want. It's just that you can't mention like Palestinians, right? Or you can talk about Ukraine all you want, just don't mention Russians. Like it's ridiculous. You can't talk about black life and not mention the whites. And I feel like that's appropriate. So, and you got to do it in a way that may or may not. You have to do it in a way that's truthful, and sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. So this idea that this whole society's power derives from their ability to keep white people comfortable, and dignity derives from their ability to keep white people comfortable, that's actually a fascinating premise, because that is a lot of middle-class blacks. They derive their power and their dignity from their ability to make white people comfortable, which is not great for black people, especially black self-determination. And the idea that so much of the world is determined by white male sexual anxiety is, once again, accurate. And I say this as someone who, in a college town, and the entire Athens, Georgia is kind of organized around remembering nostalgia for REM and football. But, there are a lot of black players, like huge black guys hurling themselves across the line. But for the most part, it's to get to create the kind of climate that gets the white students laid. Like there's an entire sexual infrastructure complete with a Greek system that like supplies comfort women, and then an alcohol economy that is supposed to be dumb to the fact that all but the oldest kids are over 21. So it's like there's an entire chemical, physical infrastructure around getting these white guys laid that's really astounding, because I suspect that's one of the only reasons they can keep them in college. We will promise we will deliver you women. And so to see this, the infrastructure, especially around my town, around this whole school exists to manage the sexual anxieties of white guys, and then a school on top. A lot of schools are like hedge funds with schools on top. Like Yale, it's just a big hedge fund with like a school on top. University of Chicago, I'm sure Harvard's the same way. A lot of these schools are just big hedge funds with universities on top to kind of launder the money. University of Georgia is a little bit different. I think it's just kind of a sexual dispensary with a university on top, which is what it is, but the school is run, and the infrastructure and the economy is run by white male sexual anxiety. Greek system's real big here. So it's not a ridiculous premise that everyone else is supposed to conform to white guy's sexual anxiety. And a ridiculous premise for a movie. And then what happens when you don't? Well, you lose your power. You're on the run. There's lots of scenes in this movie where the actor is running. Running. And if you don't go by the script, not only do you lose your power, everybody else's power is jeopardized, so they're going to come after you too. Because, a lot of people have built their lives off of the business of keeping the peace and managing white anxiety. That's how they've built, that's how they've attained a respectable place in their family and in their community, because that's a good industry for a lot of black people. Making white people comfortable is a good industry for a lot of black people. And if you don't want to do that, you might screw up not only your own gig, but they're worried about you screwing up their gig. And I think this goes all the way back to Booker T. Washington. He was the first magical Negro. He was promised that he was going to conform black life to making white people comfortable. And then we just have never really gotten the stank after that, because there's so much money. There's so much money, and if you want a good middle class life in America, that often was the case. And I think that's unfortunate. But I do appreciate that it's tying a lot of these threads together. At least the trailer seems to tie all of these threads together about how much peace, how much presumed goodness is received if all you have to do is make white people comfortable. You get power, you get esteem, you get power for your friends, you get to serve a purpose because peace is good. It's better than war, right? All of that, and you just accept the job of making white people comfortable, which isn't the worst thing. You want to make people comfortable. But then when their interests are not the same as your interests, you're supposed to knuckle under your interests for the sake of peace, and that's the problem. That's the problem. That's why in a lot of ways we're not self-determining. And you have to manage their anxieties. And I think it's nice that it's perfectly fine that they use the white guy's sexual anxiety as the as kind of the crux. I'm sure people are going to be upset in the comments when the movie comes out about, oh, doesn't the girl have agency? Well, you know, yes and no. You could pursue or not pursue, and like desire changes based on whether someone's going for it or not, and there's still a plot that doesn't take away the girl's agency, but acknowledges that to keep the peace, the black guy should have backed off. But maybe he doesn't want to keep the peace. Maybe he wants to be a free Negro. And part of what it is to be a free Negro is to, you know, have intimate relationships with whom you deem appropriate to have intimate relationships with. And not for the sake of white comfort, but for the sake of your own thrill, for the thrill of it. And so there are two things. There's one, so that was an interesting decision to make the central conflict about autonomy with respect to intimate relationships and how you're supposed to kind of give over that autonomy for the sake of, you know, there's slim chance at money and power in these United States. But another way, and I think this could be like the society part 2, would be how much of that power means you have to treat black people like garbage. Because that's the thing. It's not really the problem with the magical Negro. The problem with the person in that position who keeps the peace by assuaging white guilt is that part of the job, almost an unavoidable part of the job, is you have to at some point in time do the dirty to other black people. You have to either deny their claim, you have to do the dirty to other black people. You have to either gaslight other black people, or sometimes you just have to turn them in. Like, you have to be the bad guy. I've never seen a person in that position who hasn't kept their mouth shut when they should have said something, or in some other way screw up, sell out some other black guy or some other black issue in order to keep their position as magical Negro. And that is another way they could have gone with the script about like how it's a great job, and then all of a sudden he finds out he has to treat black people like garbage, and then like that could be the tension. A lot of people think you can do this job without treating black people like garbage. I've never seen it happen. I just think that people just kind of make their excuse about, well, this is just kind of the way the world is. But everybody I've seen in that position at some point in time had to treat other black people like garbage, and they did it for the money, and they did it for the shine, and they did it. And that is, I think, the big problem. So I'm looking forward to this movie. I'm going to see the movie with, I'm going to see the movie. I'm going to pay the money. Right. All right. So there's somebody saying that it's kind of like the American Fiction movie. I think the American Fiction movie is coming up different because there's another trailer with Wright. He's a pretty good actor, and he plays a black guy with he writes a book, and then he writes a spoof book that's like ghettoized, and then the spoof book becomes the book that like he becomes famous for, and it's really paints black people in a horrible light. And he's like, well, you know, I could get a lot of money if I portray this kind of black people for the whites. That is a different kind. That's similar because his job is anxiety, like assuaging white anxiety, and he now gets like a movie deal and all of this stuff because he portrays the kind of black person who is not the kind of black person who the white people need to see, especially white liberals, and is not particularly threatening, just in a different way, is non-threatening. I think it's a similar movie, but I think there's a whole genre that this could be like we have westerns, and then we have, crime thrillers, and then we have legal thrillers, and then we have like what black people have to do in order to, make it, and what making it looks like. That could be an entire genre, and what black people do to deal with white anxiety. So to say that they're the same movie presumes that there isn't room in the world for both of those movies, and I think they're going to be sufficiently different. And the issue is like a big enough issue. I hope the Society for Magical Negroes plays it a little bit straighter than Boots Riley's last one, Sorry to Bother You, because I like Sorry to Bother You, but I think it was a little bit too art house. And I want the Society for Magical Negroes to be a little bit straight, a little bit more of a straight shot, because I think you have like a really good premise. Someone, I'm looking at the comments now. Someone mentioned the Eddie Murphy bit was in Raw. Yeah, that's where he said that like Michael Jackson was the safe Negro, and that's why I couldn't take out Brooke Shields, and it wouldn't be, it would make people uncomfortable because they know at the end of the night Brooke Shields was gonna, pipe would be laid, and so Eddie Murphy was showing himself to be not the magical Negro. Eddie Murphy 30 years later is, different Eddie Murphy, but I would have liked. I hope the Society for Magical Negroes, does its job. And all of its job has to do is just kind of show how much of black life, how the incentives for black life are organized to create the quality of black people and quality of black action that actually makes white people comfortable at the end, at the expense of black autonomy and self-determination. And to keep the peace, but for the sake of keeping the peace. Right? So you can have a nice, peaceful life as long as you're willing to, conform that life into making the whites comfortable. And I just don't think that's the same as being free. I just don't think that. And you have to be dishonest with yourself and with them, and it turns language. One of my white friends told me straight up that white people don't have a concept of real talk. There is no real talk. Because everything in their they use words to make each other feel a certain way and to feel comfortable. So like there is no real talk with them. They don't have that concept. She's like, yeah, I've never actually heard of that concept of real talk. And then will you actually say what you think? Because that's just not why we use words. And so yeah, they're an anti-truth people. That's what happens when you're built on a genocide. All right, so thank you for your time, and I hope the movie lives up to the trailer. I'm sure the movie's going to have its own issues, but if it just gets at the promise and the conforming powers of white anxiety and the promise of what kind of life you can kind of wrestle for yourself if you're willing to succumb to kind of conforming your life to assuaging white anxiety, then that will be enough for a movie. Right? I'm going to pay for the movie. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be good enough, sufficient, because I think it goes at the issues of like the whole industry of people who are, not house Negroes, but they dance for master. All right. Thank you for your time. Hey, if you appreciate anything I'm saying, and not a lot of people say this because, I jeopardize my white jobs. By talking like this, you should go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month to my production company, Another Chance Productions, and I'll just kind of keep doing what I'm doing. Eventually, I want to get at someone to come and clip shorts and all that, but the logistics is hard, and I'm stretched thin because I have other things. I study Hegel. This is what I do when I'm not reading very hard things. Oh, by the way, if you want more about how much of life is conformed by white sexual anxiety, there's a great section of this in Tommy Curry's The Man Not, and pages 88. It's a section on Fanon and Eldridge Cleaver. page 88 through, I don't know, 93-ish. It might start before that. No, this whole chapter, Lost in a Kiss, is like fantastic. But just the idea that white sexual anxiety does a lot of work in our lives, and in the way we on our institutional forms, that's just good work. That's just good work. By the way, this is just a good book in general. I talk about it a lot, but because it's probably one of the more important books you might read in your life. And that's just the way it is. All right. Talk to you on Monday. We'll talk about something completely different. Peace.